All right, the term long-time listener, first-time caller has never been truer than it is today, as I'm joined by Carl, our CTO. He's joining us because he has designed an AI bot for use within our business. And we thought, given all the buzz around AI and often the confusion around what the real-world applications are, we'd just shine a little light on a little tiny project that he's worked on and just run through it and show what he's done. So Carl, thank you for coming on and thank you for building the bot.
Thank you for having me.
All right, look, let's start off with how this came about. When and why did you make this and what is it?
Yeah, so funny story around this is that I was up here in Brisbane actually late last year for Christmas celebrations for the company. And the next day I basically went out to the airport and had my flight cancelled.
Awesome. Which
meant that I had a nice 8-hour delay. So I could have went back into the city and did some shopping, but decided that I wasn't going to do that. So I had 8 hours in an airport where I just had time to think. And I don't, being the CTO at First Focus, you don't get a lot of headspace and time. So wanted to check out what's the latest stuff going on with AI and really just digging into that and reading about what people were doing. It had been about 12 months since we saw ChatGPT sort of come out and hit the market, and didn't really have any good use cases for it as such. So just really wanted to dig into that and see what people were doing. So I got about 2 hours into it, and I was sort of discovering that people were building assistants, right? And I think for me, that made a lot of sense. And I could see some products there that I could use and maybe build something. I had about 6 hours left in the airport. So I just thought, well, let's give this a go, right? So I found a little tool called Private GPT. Mm-hmm. That would just sort of been released, and I was watching a YouTube video on it. I thought, I'll just give this a go. I had Hyper-V on my laptop, so I spun up a little Windows 11 box and deployed Private GPT. And essentially, it was just grabbing a few documents in the repository that we had and just testing it out, and pulling down an actual open sourced LLM for it to interact with. So put all that together. I think I had about 2 hours left in the airport by the time I got all that together, and a bit of Python scripting, a few other bits and pieces. And
showing off now, but that's fine. Yeah.
Sorry?
Showing off now?
Yeah.
That's fine.
But, from that, I could actually see that this thing was real. It worked well. It was extremely slow. So I spent probably the last 2 hours in the airport plugging it into OpenAI, which is ChatGPT behind the scenes. And the speed of it just took off. Okay. And the responses that were coming out were just amazing. So that's what spawned it. Jumped on the plane and finally got home and decided that we'd continue on with something a bit more advanced. So.
Okay. Two things there. One is I'm always too scared to use the term repository in case I say depository by mistake. And I've just always had this weird hang up on that. So
sure.
less said about that, the better. Did you make the mistake when you got back to work telling someone that you had made this and then set expectations really high about what it could do and then have to deliver on a far greater project?
What actually happened was we went into what we call our IQP cycles, which are our quarterly sort of initiatives.
I'm aware of them.
Yes. but for everyone else, right? Yeah. So, all these acronyms that you have in-house.
Yeah. Basically, the big important things we do each quarter.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I think, the emergence of AI, we actually had an IQP to get some of these ideas across the company and start using either GPT bots or whatever we could build, or how could we use AI better and put some examples up. So it was pretty good timing, and it allowed me to just get a bit of headroom and time to really build something out. So
Okay.
I guess the next step there was to actually build what we've got now.
Sounds good. All right. We're going to get to some examples. We're going to throw them up on the screen at the end. We're going to make people wait. I just want to go through a few questions first to kind of set the scene and help people understand a bit more about, how it's been created and what makes a good, chat bot, essentially. Am I using the right term, chat bot? Is that the right thing to use?
I think we've gone beyond chatbot now.
Okay. What would we call it?
Chatbot was like canned responses based on...
If they say this, you say that, rather than
correct.
Like natural language model.
So I think we're more onto bots become assistant now.
Okay.
And I think you're seeing that with Microsoft and those sort of tool sets coming out.
Okay, well, thank you for the clarification. So to create a good AI assistant, right, there's, I guess, the underlying fundamental is data. So in our case, what sort of documents did you pull data from? What library did you create? And then the whole garbage in, garbage out, like how... As the most fundamental layer, what do businesses who are looking to do something like you've done need to make sure they've already got in play?
Yeah, so this is probably the most important piece of it. Being able to have good data, like garbage in, garbage out, like you said, is critical. So for this particular assistant that we've built, we're sort of trying to build something out for people that were new in the company and wanted to ask questions. And we wanted to simulate that, we're all in a hybrid working situation now. You can't always spin around on your chair and just ask Bob beside you, right?
Yeah.
So
and Bob's the worst anyway. So
forget Bob then.
Yeah.
But how do you simulate that with the assistant, right? So we wanted to put in things like all of our policies and procedures for the company. We wanted to have the operations manuals in there so that was familiar. We put a lot of training content, so the transcripts out of all of our LMS into that. And then just a whole bunch of, I guess, relevant documentation for sales and TAMs and all sorts of bits and pieces across the company that we developed. But really the big part of that was, and sorry, I should mention our book that we have internally as well called The Method. Yes.
Right there. How convenient.
So ingesting all of that data really had to go through and just sort of weed out, okay, that thing's 5 years old. It's actually not relevant anymore. Or we have all this overlapping information, but it's actually saying different things. So it's really sanitizing that data and making sure that it's the most relevant, up-to-date, and I guess... succinct as it can be, which took, you'd think, oh, okay, they've had to do, they've got programmers in and to build this whole thing and put it all together, but that's really where the time is spent. And that's where the majority of time to make it actually useful and good has been spent.
So it's a big fundamental question for people thinking about this. Who owns the content in your business, especially from an LMS perspective, if that is your intent with this? Like, who owns that library? Who keeps it up to date? Because if the answer is no one specifically, then you're probably going to want to fix that first.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if it's going to output something back to whoever's using it and it's not useful and it's actually counterproductive, what's the point?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I'm just thinking here that initially I was thinking it's almost an LMS, but it's not really. It's what it is you need to almost already have the LMS. This is making it super accessible and super usable and super intuitive. Because the biggest problem most businesses have is they'll write up some compliance doc or some policy or something, but then how do I find it? Where in SharePoint is it? Does anyone even refer back to it? You have a car crash. You don't suddenly go, oh, good, I'm going to jump on my laptop, go to SharePoint, go policies, go find the car crash policy or whatever. Whereas this says, I've just had a crash, what do I do? Yeah. And it's that easy. And everyone's used to that kind of interface that's quite natural, I think.
Yeah. I think it's been a natural sort of progression, right? And this is the next stage. It's really, we're all using file shares at some point, and someone had to structure all the files to know where to navigate and go and all those sorts of things. And then you sort of moved up into SharePoint, right? Where you could do a search function across everything and try and look for documents. And that was pretty good, text indexing. And this is just that next progression where you can just ask something pointed and it will go find it for you, right? And give you relevant content and either summarize it or you can get the detail, etc. So, yeah.
Okay, next question is ChatGPT versus OpenAI, the difference and why use the latter?
Yeah, okay. So, building GPTs, as they're called, or ChatGPT, and you can build apps in ChatGPT, but it's within, ChatGPT's environment. The difference with OpenAI and being able to use that platform is you can build the agents up, or I shouldn't say agents. Basically, you can build an assistant up in OpenAI, and that allows you to actually do API calls into it. So it means that you can actually take, instead of having ChatGPT sort of hem you into their platform, you can take it out of their platform, but still leverage the LLM that sits in the background. That's large language model for anyone watching. The difference with OpenAI and building out, say, a web interface for your chatbot is that we've got a simple sort of example here today where it's sitting in a web browser, but being able to then take that and do like a webhook and put it into an application. A good example is we'll probably take this particular assistant that we're using and actually put it into our PSA, which is ConnectWise, so that while they're using the ticketing system or people in the company are using our PSA, they can have basically a window view in that application and be able to use the assistant as well. So you get that sort of capability, or you can embed it in a website if you want to use it for your customers, or so it just makes it much more versatile and allows you to take it in a lot more places.
Nice. Yeah, okay. I think I want to see it in action, and I've written down some questions that I reckon we should put into it. So
Okay.
Should we do that?
We should do that.
All right, cool. All right, so first off, actually, you just mentioned how it can be accessed, e.g. inside ConnectWise for us, the PSA. At present, it's just URL, right? We just go to that.
That's right.
Okay.
It's just a basic web page at the moment.
All right, cool. We're looking at it now. So I'm going to say, if I'm managing people, what meetings do I need to ensure I have with them? Because I was confused by this when I first started. I would have made so many typing errors. I'm so glad you're doing this. Okay, cool.
That's all right. Even if I make a spelling mistake, that's probably a good example of seeing the large language model
Good point.
actually deal with that.
I've started caring less and less as I screw up. What's interesting there too is the delay here. You pointed out to me yesterday, and obviously it's come up with a great answer there, but it's not progressively dropping down the data anymore under the 4.0.
Correct. So OpenAI released version 4.0, which is Omni, short for Omni.
Okay. I was calling it 4.0. It shows I'm so dumb.
4.0. So 4.0.
Yeah, 4.0, cool.
But essentially, it's much quicker. It's about double the speed of their latest iterations, and it just dumps content almost instantly like that.
Okay, so let's take a look at that answer, right? It's a little far away from me, so do you want to just run through that?
Yeah, so to effectively manage people, there are several types of meetings you should have with them. Daily huddles, weekly meetings, and it's giving you a little bit of insight into what daily huddles are and what should be done
in
there.
an agenda format, that's cool.
Yep.
Okay,
weekly
nice.
meetings, monthly meetings, quarterlies, roundtables.
I'm convinced it knows what it's talking about. Okay, let's go for another one. If I have a company supplied Tesla and I have a crash, what should I do other than run away screaming? Don't do that. We'll cut that. Immediately abortion blame to the other party.
Okay.
Just talk amongst yourselves. Just what is the current sort of, I mean, obviously the complexity of the query will, I would assume, impact things, but the wait time on a request? There we go.
Yeah, it depends on the amount of content that it's gathering and how much it's going across. And I won't go into the specifics, but it's all tokenized. So it depends how many tokens it needs to use for the delay that
You have immediately lost me, but I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I've just crashed my Tesla. What happens? make sure everyone's okay, I'm sure is in there somewhere. I can't remember.
Yeah, so you need to understand the motor vehicle policy that we have.
So that, and in essence, what that's doing is going, hey, we actually have a policy for this. We have essentially just presented that to you again. It's not like it didn't exist beforehand. It's just very easy to access now.
So I've actually just put in, if I have a company supplied Tesla, what should I do?
Okay.
So I actually missed the end of that. But what it's come up with is just our policies around how to request a Tesla at First Focus.
There you go.
Doing it through salary sacrifice, etc. So for any of those looking for a job at First Focus, we do offer Teslas.
I got myself a Model Y. Can recommend. Okay, I'm going to give you one last one just to sort of demonstrate its credentials there. So what's the difference between our cloud readiness assessment and our digital maturity assessment? And here, one of the confusing things, other than who is the subject matter expert and what, when you first come on to a company of this size, is also which products are suitable for which situations.
Okay, so what's the difference between our cloud readiness assessment and
our digital maturity assessment?
Okay, so I've made a few mistakes in there, let's see what happens.
Do you set parameters around this? Like, I'm just thinking, as a bad person would, can you make it swear at you, or can you get it angry? Like, if you ask it to specifically...
Okay, good question.
Thank you. I was worried it was a weird question.
Very good question. So, behind the scenes in OpenAI, we've actually built out the assistant, and within there, you can actually specify the parameters around how the assistant can handle requests. So we've actually given it probably about half an A4 page of actual specified, I guess, rules around how it handles requests. Yeah. So I can't swear. It will only stick to policy documents. It won't give you some outside answer.
It can't have opinions, maybe?
Yeah. So we've locked it down quite a bit so that it focuses on what the intent of what it's supposed to be doing.
Fantastic.
So
okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So what did we get to with that? Did it give a good answer?
Yeah. So it gave us the cloud readiness assessment here, and what its purpose is. So it evaluates the organization's preparedness for migrating to cloud services. Whereas in a digital maturity assessment down here, we're assessing the overall digital capabilities and maturity of an organization.
Which is past just the tech, it's the policies, procedures, people, etc.
Correct. Okay. So, it's talked about the focus areas here around a cloud readiness assessment, and then you can see the difference in the focus areas around a digital maturity assessment, which is, adding security into a disaster recovery, those sorts of things, which is a much larger sort of body of work.
I feel like my eyes should be good enough that I can read that on that big screen, but I cannot. So optometrists.
Maybe I need to do a bit of different coding here to make it a bit bolder.
No, I like it. It's fine. It looked great on my laptop the other day, but not so much right now because, again, my eyes. All right, look, that's fantastic, and well done you. That's very impressive. The question for you is, where do you think this is heading in terms of real world AI application for businesses? As the CTO of a large MSP, what should people be excited about? Where do you think we're heading in the near term?
I think in the near term, these assistants are going to be more and more embedded into all of the application sets that we're using. So we're already seeing that. I think every day I'm seeing a new vendor with a new AI capability, particularly in the assistant space. We're seeing Microsoft do that across the M365 stack. But from our perspective, we created this as an onboarding assistant for staff. Mm-hmm. Where I see that going is I can see it actually helping all people in the company, right?
Absolutely.
There's no limitation to, I guess, it being expanded out to everyone in the company.
It really democratizes knowledge. Like there's no longer silos. Just because you're not in, the infrastructure team or whatever doesn't mean you can't have access to the stuff they're basing a lot of their decisions on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So frees people to be across more things in the company. But probably the next iteration of this particular technology, and we've seen this with, we were talking about for and
Yes.
omnipresence, I guess.
Certainly was. I didn't say 4.0.
Omni, when we get that term, is really now bringing in the visual aspects. So being able to create visual content, plugging in voice as well. So putting all these together, the next iteration of this for me is really taking it out and let's forget the keyboard, and I don't have to, worry about my spelling there. But being able to interact with it and just talk to it.
Yeah.
Making it mobile, putting it on a mobile device and always having that with you. That's the next iteration of it from my perspective. And I think that's going to be highly valuable to staff and save them a lot of time.
Massively. Yeah, HR teams out there are going to love this, and just productivity, efficiency gains, big.
Yeah.
Again, as long as your underlying data set allows your staff to pull this information from what is ultimately an interface.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point. We've talked about garbage in, garbage out, and data, but great, we've built it. It's not a one-off, all right?
Who owns it now? Who looks after it, maintains it?
Correct. So who's going to look after that data? Who's going to curate it, make sure that it's right? Then you need to go retest and make sure it's outputting the right sort of results for your organization. And then, yes, we've had to put some development into some PHP code, and there's Python in the background. It's running off a Linux distro. So, security updates and, so it does have a maintenance and upkeep
cost
component to it, and cost. Yeah,
and then that gets into an interesting conversation around attribution. I mean, marketing hat on, right? Love that. If I'm spending this, where do I see the return? Is a potential blocker on adoption that it could potentially be difficult to get a direct correlation between effort, cost, and return? Like, what would you be measuring in this case, for example, within your business to understand the impact it's had?
Yeah, so let's take it from that onboarding perspective, and this was the view when we sort of started building out the assistant, was right now in our organisation, we spend a lot of time onboarding people, particularly in the first 6 months that they come into the organisation. And a lot of that time is face-to-face. Now, we don't want to take that away. That's important. Getting to know people across the company and having that onboarding experience one-on-one is great. But like I said before, it's that you need to ask questions. You need to bother people, interrupt people, and spin around on your chair and ask Bob, right? If we can take 50% of that away from the onboarding of people in the company, that's a huge saving, right?
Yeah.
So if they've got an assistant there that can fulfill the same purpose. So that's just one example. Yeah. Obviously, for things like the service desk and procedures and how to handle tickets and technical information, if they can readily get that and not have to escalate tickets, or so you can see the cost savings and potential effort savings that can come back from these sort of assistants.
You know what I'd love to do is putting my sales and marketing hat on, as I often do. I pretty much never take it off. The idea of having something like this interact with or integrate with HubSpot, for example, and then I could just go, hey, when was the last time someone from this lead was interacted with? Who was it and what was said? And just rather than going through emails, notifications, different contexts in the role, like the company, like it would be so great to just have that simplified. Particularly when you're working through old lists of companies you might have worked with once, or for a non-recurring engagement, or you lost a deal. Tell me why we lost this. How long ago? Is the same person still in the company? Just stuff like that would be so useful and just save so much time.
100%.
So if you can make that happen, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure.
No pressure. Yeah.
Listen, just probably to back on to that, we've seen a few products coming out now, and the mobile phone's at risk of the way that it's being used now, right? We've all gotten used to touching our phones and interacting with apps. What if we took that away and you just interact with voice now? And we're starting to see some other models coming through around actual LLMs, or I think they're called an LMS. I'll need to check that. But essentially, they learn how apps are put together and API calls and how the apps are used, so that when you do do something with voice, like you can go book a trip and say, hey, I want to go to Bali or, wherever you want to go, and I need a hotel accommodation for X amount of time, and I want to stay in 5-star accommodation or 4 or whatever it is, and it just goes off and can book all of that for you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so that's
That's
some of the future.
Yeah.
I think that's where it's going, and it's exciting.
The only other thing that's less exciting is the absolute proliferation of average content that is coming our way already, but more so as video becomes far high quality and easier to create. Blogs obviously already are, but they're terrible. And it's going to get harder and harder to cut through the noise of mountains of very average content to give content like this, which is just absolutely top shelf. So that's going to be the challenge as well, right? On that very up our sales note, I reckon that's a great place to leave it.
Okay.
What I will say though is if you have got any questions around the application of AI within your business, maybe you've already started something, but you're after a bit of advice or just some feedback, or you would like us to talk to you about how to actually really ramp up your approach to AI, come and have a chat. Feel free to reach out to me, direct message on LinkedIn. Carl is also on LinkedIn. We'll leave it there. One last thing, actually, when I think about it, if you have anything you'd like us to cover in a future episode, any topic or conversation subject, basically the same thing. I said the same thing in 2 different ways. Let me know as well. Reach out on LinkedIn. I'd love to have that chat.